Hey, it's Coach Anderson here again from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online, U.S. History from 1877 to present. Today we're going to pick with Unit 7 again, the Roaring Twenties, and we're going to start with Lesson 3, Nativism and Jim Crow in the 1920s. Now we're going to find that term nativism is one that we've heard of before, and nativism is the belief that a country's residents should be the ones, who the country is for. So if you're an American, you're a person, of course, that believes that America should be for Americans, and you don't necessarily get along with the idea that other immigrants or immigrants, a lot of immigrants, I should say, should be brought into the country. What we're going to do, of course, is pick up with the unit focus questions as we always do, and this is what characteristics of the 20s made it distinctly different than the previous decades in the United States. Once again, we won't answer it now, but we will answer it, of course, at the end of the unit. The vocabulary for today, of course, academic vocabulary and content vocabulary as we see them, and when they come up, of course, in the lesson, we'll try to address them, but in the event that we miss one, just go back, of course, and look them up for yourself. Today, we're going to look at our lesson focus question, which we will answer. This is, how did American traditional values change during the 1920s? Do now activity, we'll start with that. Take out your journals, write down the statement, and let us know what you think. It says, reflect on the term nativist, which we have encountered before, and give a definition in your own words. Now, that should be easy because I just went ahead and helped you with that. So go ahead, take a few moments, write down a definition for nativist in your own words. Okay. As we said, that when you look at a nativist is a person, of course, that believes that a country should be for its residents. It shouldn't necessarily be a country, of course, that allows a great deal of immigrants, of course, into the country. And they believe that the values of that country should be the values, of course, that everybody should ascribe to. So when you look at nativist sentiment in the United States of America, it's something that's been around for a long time. And even today, there's a lot of nativist sentiment in that what we're trying to do, of course, is, or what the government is trying to do in some cases, is limit the amount of people, of course, that are coming into the country so that we can make America for Americans. Now, either how you fall on that, either side of that particular equation is what your own personal beliefs are, but that's our history, and we notice that things in history, of course, kind of go through cycles. Today, we'll start with the resurgence of nativism and the government response. So in the 1920s, we had just got finished, of course, fighting in World War I, and there was a lot of, there was a drop in European immigration before the fighting that happens, of course, in World War I. We're going to find that there were quotas that had already been created that were restricting immigration, but we still saw a significant amount of immigration that was happening. In the 1920s, we're going to find that a new quota system is going to be put in place, primarily because of the fear of the Red Scare, or the fear that communism, of course, was going to take over in this country. An example of some of the fear that surrounded communism or the Red Scare was the case of Sacco and Vanzetti. They were two immigrants, of course, Italian immigrants, that were arrested for the murder of someone, and then they, after an appeal, where a lot of people didn't know that they really did it, and that it was more public sentiment that said they did it than evidence that said they did it. But at the end of the day, they were executed for murder. So that kind of gives you an idea what the sentiment, of course, was in the country. So the National Origin Act set a quota of immigration for everyone but Mexicans. So if you were coming from Europe, there was a quota about how many would be allowed in from each individual nation. But if you lived in Mexico, you can come here primarily because we needed people, of course, to work in those, fruit fields and vegetable fields in the American South, West and West. The 1920s also saw a resurgence in the Ku Klux Klan, and it spread to northern and western cities because that's where a lot of black people had went, of course, to get jobs. And when the war was over with, we're going to find that there is going to be a migration in the 20s, of course, with African Americans, but we're also going to see Southern whites that will move to the area also, and we're also going to find that some of the people in the North will adopt some of the tenets of the Ku Klux Klan because they want to have access to those jobs that blacks, of course, were taking over. The new morality. In the 1920s, we're going to find that there is going to be a break with traditionalism, and we're going to find that Americans will start moving more towards modern thinking and modern values, and that's going to be, that's going to be put on on the forefront of everything with the image of the flapper. The flapper is going to be the 1920s woman. She's not going to be like her mother. She's going to smoke, she's going to drink, she's going to dance, she's going to show skin that she shouldn't show. And in that, it's going to be a fight between traditional culture and modern culture. The 1920s brought a debate between modernists and fundamentalists when it came to religion. On the one side, you had the evolutionists, and on the other side, you would have the more traditional or the fundamentalists. And in one of the biggest, cases that involves that debate between modernism and fundamentalism is going to be the Scopes Monkey trial, where you'll have two lawyers, William Jennings Bryan, who's been very important in our history because he ran for president, Cross the Gold speech, if you remember, and then Clarence Darrow, and they'll argue over, they're both sides, of course, during the Scopes Monkey trial. Here's a picture of the flapper, the image, and you notice on the caption it says, "You going out dressed like that?" Well, before the 1920s, no right-thinking woman would be out, of course, with her shoulders out and her dress at her knees. Come on now. So in 1920s, we're looking at a different type of woman. Reverend Billy Sunday was one of the evangelist preachers of the 1920s, and one of the statements a quote that Billy Sunday said that I can kind of, I just kind of love this quote. It says, "The law tells me how crooked I am, but grace comes along and straightens me out." The Reverend William Ashley Sunday. The Scopes Monkey trial, once again, we have Clarence Darrow and then William Jennings Bryan. It's about teaching, of course, evolution in schools. Prohibition. The backdrop of the 1920s, of course, the thing that makes it fun is going to all because of the 18th Amendment. And what the 18th Amendment does is it outlaws, during the 1920s, alcohol. And because it outlaws alcohol, we're going to find illegal clubs like speakeasies, of course, that will be created where jazz will flow, and then whiskey will flow, and then, of course, jazz will be played in the background. Prohibition will bring corrupt politicians and gangsters and G-men, giving the 1920s a nickname of the Roaring Twenties. On the one side, you have Al Capone. On the other side, you have people like Elliot Ness, of course, and J. Edgar Hoover. Here's a picture of Scarface Al Capone. He uses prohibition to create a large criminal empire based on alcohol. And the interesting about that, he wasn't even, when they finally did catch up with him, he wasn't arrested because of violating the Volstead Act or the 18th Amendment. He was arrested for tax evasion. Lesson focus question. How did American traditional values change during the 1920s? The 1920s brought in a new morality that changed women's traditional roles. The flapper image. Women weren't content to be just wives and mothers anymore. They were fundamentalists. Fundamentalists were challenged evolutionists on the ideas of biblical teachings, and the status quo was upset. Once again, it is your history. It is American history. Don't take my word for it. Do your own research and reach your own conclusions. And remember, when you look at our history, you're going to find that there will be a lot of parallels and a lot of the things, of course, that we experience, in the history of this country. We can still kind of make those connections, of course, today. So once again, this is Coach Answer from Mississippi Public Broadcasting Online U.S. History from 1877 to present, and we'll see you next time.